Hello, Samantha.
Hi, Daniel.
Good to be here with you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this with me. Really appreciate it.
Yes, I understand today we're talking about law of attraction, law of creation, creating your reality, manifesting all those good things.
We are indeed. It's something I get asked about all the time. It's something that's really helped me. And I just think it helps with that whole healing journey once you've cleared yourself and then you're in a space to then be the creator that you were put on this earth to be. But it's still, we all struggle with it. Even I do, because it is a technique. It's not about wishful thinking and saying, I want this and I want this and I want this, but then you've got to put yourself in the right frame of mind, the right feeling. It's a kind of a little formula, isn't it? But can be very simple.
It is. And of course, people also wonder, well, what about my life path? What about my pre-birth agreements, my contracts? How does all that play in to me creating my reality now versus the me that I was before I was born into this body and what that higher version of me was creating for this life? And I think that people tend to go either too far into believing in one or the other and don't see the two as working together to create the life that we're living. In other words, our desires don't come from nowhere. There's a reason why you want to be an actress and an energy healer and all the things that you want to be. And there was a reason why I got that spark within me to start writing screenplays all those years ago, 30 years ago now, and got so interested in channeling as opposed to something else. And so we don't necessarily know where these desires come from, but once they come up, of course, then we have to deal with our beliefs about what's possible. And we talked about that last time with you because other people were sharing with you their beliefs about what's possible for you as an actress, what's possible for you as a person moving to a new city and not really knowing anybody and all that. So we do have to face our beliefs, our parents' beliefs, society's beliefs, all these different things, our friends, as we seek to create something. But usually the spark to create what we want has come from that higher self that helped to create this life. So then as we move down the path, we sort of have to just acknowledge, okay, I have some beliefs, some of them are helping, some of them are not helping at all. And so I need to figure out which ones are which.
Yes. It just made me think of something because you can be told something like, oh no, that's never going to happen for you. That's never going to happen for you. That's never going to happen for you. And there you go. Instantaneously, a belief is formed, right? But it's
Yeah.
only, and I'm just bringing some of my energy work into it because the more I cleared, and just got to sort of like an empty space, then you realize, oh, like, why do I have why do I want to do comedy? Why do I want to do acting? Why do I want to do the healing? Why do I want to do the channeling? And then you realize you really are a multifaceted being, aren't you? Where have those thoughts come? They've always been there. And like you said, 30 years on, for some of us, they've still never left you because they need to be fulfilled, right? Like, where did they come from? So you're
Yeah.
saying they come from it's the divine part of you is calling upon you, right? I think that's what
To
you're saying.
yeah, to the spark of the desire. Of course, you can see something, you can be made aware of something that it exists as a human being, and then feel the desire for it. Then, and it's something you want to move towards. But still, even the creation of that experience that you're having, that's telling you, oh, like I remember realizing in my 20s, oh yeah, people write these movies before they're made. Like I met a guy who was trying to become a working screenwriter, and then that lit that spark within me. I went to Harvard Extension, Harvard University of all places, to learn about screenwriting initially, and because I was living in Boston, and then moved to LA and took screenwriting courses at UCLA. So like all of that was set into motion when I realized, like, hey, this is something I like doing too. I want to do this. And I got, you might say, it was sort of an early foray into the world of channeling, because ideas would come to me. These characters would come to me, these lines of dialogue, these things that were just dropping in, and I didn't even know what channeling was, or certainly that I wasn't thinking that I was channeling. But some might say, well, it's a desire that didn't ultimately come to fruition for you because you didn't write all these movies that got made. But I did write movies. Like, I wrote them, they became real in my head, I could see them. And so it was part of my journey, and I can see how it all got started. And the same thing is true of channeling, which I did bring to fruition, where somebody told me, oh, that's a channeled text you're reading. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that is channeled. And then from there, reading more channeling, then somebody came along and said, oh, you got to check out this Abraham person, this Abraham entity, because Esther's doing it now. Whereas I was reading Seth, and Jane had passed away 20 years prior. So I was then able to go into the Abraham world and get everything I needed from following her and her husband around and going to all these Abraham workshops, so that I could ultimately, I think, get what I needed to become a channeler myself. So again, like, I can see how these impulses to move towards these desires, they may seem like they're coincidental or happenstance, but it really, I think, is planned. And then the question becomes, in 2010, oh, you can channel, but will you ever do it on, in a way that people will want to receive it, And so those are the beliefs. And a lot of that was like an internal thing for me, of like, okay, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I am good enough, and all those things. But gradually we do want to shift our beliefs. Obviously I wanted to believe in myself and believe in the possibility that I could do this for a living, and I could do it at a level where, people would really want to see it.
Do you think then that's where everyone falls short? Because I'm just, as you were talking, it just reminded me at certain points through my life where when I was in such a happy, joyful place, and then I would have this thought like, oh my God, I'd so love to do that. I'd so love to do that. I'd love to just do this class. I'd love to do this writing class. And then suddenly, your ego, your mind just like, forget it. What's the point? Why? Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. Don't waste your time. Is that the killer? That is the killer. I just feel like then those moments of joy, that was the spark, that was the divine part of me being so creative in that moment and so happy, thinking, yes, when you are in that state of joy, that's where you're triggered or you're sparked. That's how I'd seen it. And then the killer of the manifestation then is just your bloody mind gets in the way. Correct?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's what you're saying, right? Or we don't act on it.
You know, before I got into all this and screenwriting, I was very much into psychology. I was a psych major, and I worked in mental health, and I was on that track. I thought I was going to become a therapist. And I remember Freud talked about the superego. He talked about the id, the ego, and the superego. And the superego is the internalized voice that is basically all the voices we've heard throughout our lives, especially our parents, that were telling us you're not good enough, or you can't do that. And so it just becomes this thing that we internalize, because eventually we move out of the house and we're on our own, but we still have that tendency to like defeat ourselves before we even get started. Or maybe for some it's trauma, or just past experiences with not succeeding at something, like I wanted to do this really well and I didn't. For me, the first thing would have been sports, like I wanted to be really good at sports, but I wasn't, and so there are these sort of failures in our lives. From our perspective, they're failures, and Bashar says, if at first you don't succeed, change your definition of success. So I could look back at my life in that way too, and change the way I look at my history as an athlete, and say, well, it was successful. I had all these times I played these sports, and sometimes I did well, and sometimes my team won and stuff. So we do have to become aware of these things, like just what you said and what I'm saying about the inner voice, becoming aware of it and realizing that's something I can change. Like I can't change whether I was born with the last name Kazdan or not, because I'm thinking of Lawrence Kazdan, and his son was born with that last name, and his son is now becoming a successful writer, producer, director, just like his dad, who his dad co-wrote my favorite movie of all time, Empire Strikes Back. So that's why I probably came up with that example. Or anyone who has like Sofia Coppola obviously was born. So you can't control that, but you can control your thoughts and whatever beliefs, which Abraham says belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So these are the things we do have control over, that we can shift. And as we shift them and keep following our passion, our joy, our excitement, as Bashar says, all these things that we feel as an inner calling that are going to light us up more, that are going to give us more energy, then we can see how, okay, maybe it doesn't work out the first time, but it not working out the first time only makes the time when it does work out that much sweeter. And that's the thing we also have to remember, instead of just going straight to, well, I went to that audition and I didn't get that part, so I must not be any good. And if everyone doesn't love me, then Meryl Streep was told she was too ugly by somebody to be an actress. Somebody told her that. What if she had listened to that person?
Daniel, exactly. That is so true. But if we flip it on the other side, we are creators by default, and then we are manifesting anyway. So the principles that you gave when you're holding a thought and trying to keep those emotions, high frequency emotions, but we do that day to day, right? We can have a thought that we're not good enough. We add the kind of sadness, the low self-esteem, and then you've actually manifested, right? So we're doing it every single day. I think we just think that manifesting must be all of those wonderful things that are probably the real versions of us, but we are manifesting all the time, aren't we? Because we have a thought with a low emotion and then equals your reality.
Not only that, not only did Meryl manifest that person to tell her that, because probably she wasn't feeling maybe that was part of her self-talk, and she had to see it. She had to have it manifest in another person saying it to her for her to go, oh no, I don't agree with that, and then shift that thought. So it was actually a good thing for her to have that experience. But even like this crystal I'm manifesting right now, because 100% of our reality is being manifest 100% of the time by our consciousness. Our soul is that all of this is happening within each of our souls. And right now, your soul and my soul are intersecting to co-create this reality that we're in, but it's all 100% our creation. So yeah, it's not just you manifest the good things and the not so good things, but we're manifesting all of it all the time. And when we see it that way, it's so much easier than to say, well, if I can create this, if I can create all of this, then I must be able to create a yes after I go to an audition.
Do you think that's what it takes then? Just takes one little spark of you feeling you have done that manifestation, then to say, okay, what's next? Or then that must be true. Does it just take one thing to then
It,
spark something?
it helps to have that one thing to sort of hang your hat on. If you can say, and I did this with a friend of mine that way back 20 years ago when I was living in Long Beach, California, and I had this friend and I was teaching him about all this stuff, and we were talking about the manifestation part, and I said, start small, and with something that doesn't really matter whether you manifest it or not, but you'll just show yourself, if I focus on this thing, then it will appear in my reality. If I just talk about it, think about it, visualize it. And he did it with something, and I forget what it was, but he saw it on like an album cover or something. He owned a record store, and it wasn't in his record store, but he was out somewhere and he saw this thing that he had tried to like conjure up with his, just using his imagination. And then he remember him coming to me and telling me, yeah, it works because what are the odds that it would have shown up after I'd done this? And we can do that all the time with ourselves, like just saying, I want to see this today. I want to see a purple butterfly today, or something, that maybe is a little harder than like I want to see a car, but is not so impossible to believe that you don't want to increase the degree of difficulty 1,000-fold just to prove it to yourself. But you start small and you start manifesting little things and then gradually increasing them. Everybody's done the parking spot thing, I think, where it's like I want to manifest a parking spot right in front, or close to the front, and an easy one to get into, and that sort of thing, so that we can show ourselves, yeah, this stuff does work. And if I apply it to this and it works, then all I have to do is deal with my beliefs that this other thing is going to be harder than I'm trying to manifest.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Daniel. I think that's a good introduction into manifestation. I love
Yeah,
that. So thank you, Daniel. I wanted to just touch on that really briefly, because it really can be that simple, can't it? I think it can. I think
it's a
we
good
just,
place. Yeah. It's a good place for people to start when they're thinking about manifestation, is the things we've talked about here. Of course, there's thousands of other things we could talk about when it comes to manifestation. There's a lot of nuance to it, and when do you let go, and when are you too attached to something? And maybe we can talk about that in another video, because the truth is, like, I do a manifestation event where I just talk straight for a half an hour on manifesting, and then the second half hour I do channeling for everyone's intentions. But I could keep going. I know after that half hour is over, because there's so much to consider when it comes to the creating of your reality. Like that thing I mentioned earlier about, well, what about the pre-birth agreements? What about these things you're going to experience? You chose to have this trauma when you're 3 years old or something. Yeah, there's that, and there's so much more to it. So it's a good, the things we've spoken about in this video are a good start for people to kind of get on track with it. But more questions arise as you do these things, as you participate in them in your lives, and you'll find that you'll have more questions when you get going. But at
oh,
least
I
everybody has
do.
something, yeah, that they can perhaps focus on and realize, like, okay, how do I feel about it? What do I believe about it? And start working on it.
Great. Daniel, honestly, thank you so much for this. It's been a pleasure. Just, short and sweet. And I think we get the gist of it. I do. But thank you so much for doing this with me today.
My pleasure.
Cheers, Daniel. Bye.